Construction companies, generally speaking, are very busy right now. So we've seen a slowdown in private funding and private spending in the construction side. But with all the money from the government, that's really starting to pick up now.
Hello, my name is Jason Reichl, and you're listening to Risk Management Brick by Brick. I'm fascinated with people who are helping build and maintain the physical world around us. On each episode of this podcast, we'll dive in with a risk manager, speak to them about how technology plays a role in this process. Today on Brick by Brick, we have Lyndsey with us, a returning guest. Thank you so much for joining us. We're live at RiskWorld. It's the world of risk, I guess, is the theme.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I love having you on the cast and talking about what's going on in Chubb. So why don't we start a little bit with what are you guys here talking about? What is the big focus for you at RiskWorld? It's probably meeting customers and doing that, but kind of what's some of the topics that you've been pulling out?
Yeah, absolutely. Our focus here is always the clients, right? Connecting with our clients and brokers and just talking about in general, like what are their challenges? What are they facing? What do they need from us as a carrier to help solution those challenges? Most of what I'm hearing and most of the discussions I'm having are around the casualty market this year. Broadly speaking, in all sectors, in all industries, casualty is a challenge. So clients want to understand it. They want to understand what's driving it. They want to understand what we're seeing, how we're reacting to it, proactively, what can we be doing to shift it, and, if that's changing at all.
What do you think are some of the factors going into that?
I think it depends on the industry class you're talking about, right? I mean, you hear a lot, I'm sure, about nuclear verdicts and these large judgments and settlements that are hitting our industry, and that's certainly driving losses, very large losses. But in some other industries, it's more death by 1,000 cuts, and the increased frequency and the increased severity of those small claims that is really starting to add up. And so it's that slow creep into the excess layers, right? So maybe not getting hit with a full limit loss, but multiple claims just breaching over that attachment point and into the lead layer. So we're seeing that, driven obviously by the kind of social climate in this country and the anti-corporate sentiment. Also the, litigation funding is huge. We're seeing a lot of impact from that. So a number of different things, as well as inflation, right? That has played a part and will continue to play a part of just rising costs of our claim.
Well, that's pretty heavy. How much of a risk taker are you in your personal life? Let's get a risk profile of you.
I'm fairly medium. I'll take some risks as long as they're calculated.
See, this is the calculation. Measured risk is the word of the day, apparently. Okay, what's the riskiest thing you've done lately?
I have been jaywalking in California. That's a great point. I have done that. I'm a fast driver too.
Oh, that's good.
Which, as an insurance professional, I know is not good.
Well, you have to drive fast to save lives someplace else.
That's right.
So I get it. Well, we talked a lot about some of the stuff that's coming up in construction tech, or construction, but what about in construction tech? Where are you seeing crystal ball 12 months from now? Where do you think construction companies are going to be and the industry is going to be?
Yeah, it is evolving so fast. It's almost hard to imagine what could potentially be next, right? It's such a wide category of how companies are really putting technology and AI to use. Like drones is one example. I mean, the things, drones have been around. We've been using drones in the construction space for years. But what they're doing today versus what they were doing 3, 4, 5 years ago has really, we've really just seen an evolution there, and 3D printing, and but then you talk about the artificial intelligence used in terms of like software management and supply chain management and just making companies more efficient or smarter, right? And being able to have those tools internally to be able to operate leaner and more efficiently.
What's Chubb doing in order to help your clients become more tech savvy and integrate that into their risk program?
So we're leaning into this space, and I'll say it's a challenge because there are so many different startups in this space, right? So, my phone rings constantly with new companies wanting an audience. And for the most part, if we like the idea, we'll give it to them, right? And insurance, I think, is going to play a role in it, as is the evolution of our risk engineering services, right? So that's something we're really passionate about at Chubb. It's just helping to mitigate the loss, not just pay for a claim when it happens. And so with technology, we can do a lot more and offer a lot more services. So we have been trying to, kind of carefully vet some specific vendors that we feel could really impact the safety culture or the safety aspect of the construction sites. And then from there, start some pilot projects, right? And kind of offer these to our clients and say, hey, we don't have experience yet. We like the idea. We like the concept. We think it could really impact outcomes. Will you partner with us and try to pilot?
Yeah, integrating that technology into your guys' offering is a challenge. Like selling a new line of insurance is something what you guys know how to do.
Right.
Integrating this into policyholders, or how do you do that successfully, is something that I keep seeing a lot of carriers struggle with, and even brokers when they're trying to do a similar thing.
Exactly. So we're trying to do it, and it's got to make an impact to the insurance program. Otherwise, it doesn't necessarily have a place in my world, right? So it might be great for the contractor, but how is that related to insurance?
And that's the biggest change I've seen, because I think about 2 years ago at TrustLayer, we were like, okay, take all of your data about compliance and stuff, use this to try to bring into your renewal conversation.
Right.
At the time, carriers were like, I'm not interested in that. I don't trust this. And now I'm seeing more carriers actually using that data for themselves too, right? And then vice versa, to benefit their customers for doing a good job over the course of the year.
Exactly. So it's really like, what's the impact it's having on either the behavior, on the losses, on the, just the general efficiency of a company, right? Is the company well managed? Yeah. And then how can we translate that into, everyone just wants a premium savings, right? But it's got to be reducing risk at some point.
Or building a better program for contractual risk transfer or whatever it means.
Exactly.
When I think about one thing that you said, and it's a common theme I'm hearing, which is your services arm doing well or getting more active. Is that directly tied to the aging population in risk management, aging out, and now you have to help customers build stronger programs? Is that because of the speed of innovation? Where is that really coming from, that's become a focus?
I think all those things add to it, but I think Chubb is really driving it, right? We want to be there to predict and prevent on the forefront. We are, we sell a policy and it's a promise to pay a claim. But as an industry, if we can reduce those losses, and some of them are property claims and whatnot, which loss of, building, sure. When we're talking about loss of life or injury, right? If we can be on the forefront of helping our clients to reduce and mitigate that exposure, it's a win for all of us, right? Like we hate when we have to pay claims. And then I hate when I have to charge you more because I paid a claim, right? So if we can help mitigate that, to us, like that's the evolution of insurance, becoming a service, not just a promise.
Right, yeah, that's great. What are the challenges associated with underwriting right now with new technologies used in construction? Like, where are some of those challenges? Because I know like a lot of the risk managers are complaining to me about our job is evolving rapidly and we can't really keep up with this.
Right.
So like, what are you guys doing there?
Yeah, it is. I think the biggest challenge is insurance historically, relies on actuarial science. We rely on past data to predict the future and to say, we feel comfortable we're going to be charging an adequate premium to cover expected losses. And with all this AI and technology involvement, the future is not going to look like the past. So I think from an underwriting perspective, that's our biggest challenge, is that can't utilize the same tools that we've been using for decades. We're realizing
how a lagger they are in reality.
So it's trying to marry the two and use, better analytics to say, okay, this is what we think, and then trust in that, right? Like take that calculated risk and say, okay, we trust in this perspective that when we look at the past and then look at what we think the impact might be, or we can find a place of comfort. But it's a bit of a gamble for sure.
I know that one of the things that a lot of customers talk to me about with their carrier is wanting to have a deeper relationship directly with their carrier versus not only relying on the broker, but understanding beyond the broker into the broader industry spectrum, right? That you guys cover. How are you guys getting closer to the customer's customer?
Yeah, it's critical. we are big proponents of that, and have been for a while. We meet with our clients regularly, but I think for clients it's critical. It's critical for them. I mean, insurance, insurance used to be kind of a small line item at the bottom, of a bid sheet. Now, I mean, insurance, cost has risen. So it could be a big line item. They need to understand it. They need to be able to sell, justify what that costs, what it is paying for, and the value, why they're choosing one carrier versus another, right? Or one solution versus another. And it helps them understand, benchmarking and where they are in terms of the industry, what's driving the industry, what they can expect in the future, and things that they need to be thinking about, right? They can really learn from our conversations as well as, us learning from them. So I think it's critical, and we're constantly out meeting with new clients, but then, our existing clients we meet with a few times a year.
And from an executive standpoint, Chubb, is innovation in this space critical, or how do you align your strategy? Like, I always wonder in this industry, because like we're working in software, you have a user, but in this industry, you have brokers and you have everyone else, and they're all your customers in some way.
Right.
How do you start to build programs that align through your whole partner all the way down to the customer?
It comes down to, I think, clear communication, right? And sometimes that communication breaks down, or there's a gap that we need to address. But it really, I think, comes down to the communication of all parties, and, kind of at the ground level, at the underwriting level, and, the claims teams, but then as well as at the executive levels, and, at the higher levels of carrier, client, and at the brokerage as well.
You're over 3 industries, right? And
2, construction, and then real estate and hospitality is 1.
Yeah. So what's going on in real estate and hospitality that's interesting?
There's a lot of interesting things going on in real estate and hospitality. I mean, obviously the, lack of return to office, or, reimagined office space, right, has been a topic since post-COVID.
That's where like that 3D printing technology is coming in and like changing, like you can bring it into a unit and change it from commercial to residential, right?
So we are seeing that. I would say we're seeing less conversions than we would have expected, but we are seeing some to convert, office buildings to some sort of apartment style living, and we're also seeing, we're seeing some like hotels turn to migrant housing. So we're seeing that as well. But otherwise, an expansion into similarly, like on the construction side, the expansion into data and warehousing, as well as life sciences. We're seeing our construction clients build them, but then our real estate clients diversify their portfolios into that sector as well.
I live in San Francisco, like going through huge changes in its downtown, but the hospitality industry seems to be affected by it dramatically.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So liability and things like that must be like at the forefront, like penny pinching, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. It's becoming very difficult for some clients. And depending on where you are in the country, right? San Francisco is definitely hurting and struggling from a hospitality standpoint, but other areas of the country, hospitality is booming, right? And is back to pre-COVID levels, pre-pandemic levels of occupancy and cost, right? Room rates are higher to support the higher payroll and higher costs of food and beverage and things like that the owners are facing.
Yeah, that seems to be really difficult with inflation to continue to manage that with the slim margins that those industries have.
The more information, the better. That's always what we say. But in terms of occupancy rates, be it, hotels or even apartments or, that type of hospitality or habitational, or on, a commercial office building, right? So what type of occupancy rate did you have post pandemic? Are we back to where we were? And then
has it been like a road to getting back to where we were? Like, has that been like the initiative, so to speak?
Yes, very much so. And so those kind of 2 years within COVID are really a blip in our data that we just don't believe because they're so unique, right? So understanding where we started, where we are, and then what that foot traffic looks like, right? Because to us, how many people are actually in that building? You might own the same amount of square feet as you owned in 2018, but half the people are traveling in the building which should reduce your losses significantly, right? So we want to understand that. And then certainly the impact of cost, right? Your payroll is up, but is your payroll up because, it's so hard to find workers in certain jurisdictions now. So you are having to pay or invest significantly more, or are you hiring more headcount?
Right.
So understanding what's making up the data, right? Like in a general submission, we get losses and exposure, perspective and historical, but really what's behind that and telling your story.
Is that allowing you to bring
us.
interesting new services or lines to market? Like, are you creating new product based on this new data?
I wouldn't say right now we're creating new product, but we are always looking to create new additional services in terms of like the risk engineering capabilities that we could provide. We're always trying to be forward thinking of what do our clients need or what can help them mitigate risk.
What about maintenance in all of these buildings as like not as many people are in there, and like buildings are a living things, right?
And so again, like the technology that we're seeing being implemented in buildings becomes really key because now some of these floors might be vacant, right? Whereas historically there were always people and always activity.
Someone's like, oh, some shit's happening here.
Yeah. So from a property perspective, the technology that they're implementing becomes key because really could help reduce, identify a loss, but reduce a cost if something were to happen when it's vacant.
Are we going back to construction companies now and going, like, you need to get through this period and start planning for the next 10 years? And so what's sort of their mindset when your guys are talking to them about like their project load and how they're taking on work? So
construction companies, generally speaking, are very busy right now. So we've seen a slowdown in private funding and private spending in the construction side. But with all the money from the government that's really starting to pick up now, they are busy. They are very busy. Their backlogs are growing, which is great to see, right? So it'll fuel the economy. They'll be busy for many, many years of growing that backlog. And a lot of the, sort of mega projects, mega infrastructure projects are just starting to come into the market, and, contractors are bidding on them and working through the design phase right now. So those will come, and those, again, will really keep contractors busy. But really what's has them kind of, evaluating projects really comes down to the labor force. Yeah. And can they staff the projects? Can they get the craft skilled labor that they need in some of these remote jurisdictions to be able to, feel confident that they can deliver?
Are you seeing skilled crafters migrating then to different jurisdictions to do work?
We are. We're definitely, some of our largest contractors have a lot of travel programs, right? Well, they'll take teams of folks from one job, in New Jersey and move them cross country to, Iowa to work on another project out there.
Unique challenges for them.
Right. Unique challenges and costs and
not knowing the jurisdiction as well as other jurisdictions' insurance. Let's play a game, risky or too risky, okay? All right. Trying to cross a busy road without using a pedestrian crossing, risky or too risky?
Risky.
Okay, so we'll see.
I'm a New Yorker.
Yeah, okay. Running a marathon without the proper training.
Risky.
Going on a camping trip or out into the wilderness without checking the weather forecast.
Risky.
Okay. You passed.
I did.
Yeah, you passed.
Great.
Before we go, do you have any final thoughts or advice to listeners or, the industry in general? We like to ask this question. We have a lot of different kinds of listeners.
I would say, get to know your insurance carrier, form those good relationships. At the end of the day, this is a people business. It really helps to understand the risk and understand the people that make up, the senior leadership at an organization, understand how they think about risk, how they think about their operation. You'll have much better results in the long run.
Thank you so much, Lyndsey.
Yeah, thank you.
Risk Management Brick by Brick is brought to you by TrustLayer. Find out how TrustLayer manages risk so that the people can build the physical world around us. Head over to TrustLayer.io. And then make sure to subscribe to Risk Management Brick by Brick on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. On behalf of the TrustLayer team, thank you for listening.